Hello everyone. Do you want to get started making video games? Have you opened up a game engine before and have been absolutely overwhelmed? Well, this is the video for you. To start off, let me just say that while I am a hobby game developer, my background is actually in prototyping and design development. So I'm not a traditionally trained software engineer. So while I do have many years of experience using game engines like Unity and Unreal, I am by no means an expert. And that's kind of the beauty of what we're talking about today. Now, I'm sure by now everyone and their mothers have heard about this new technology. It's called ChatGPT. It's been in the news, on Twitter, and really just kind of everywhere. While it's often talked about for things like, creative writing, making viral posts on Twitter, and writing your homework assignments for you, one of the really amazing features of this language model is its ability to help you learn and make functional code, so you can spend less time Googling on how to program in C# and actually spend more time developing your ideas into, fully fleshed out games. Before we get started, I want to lay out exactly what the purpose of this video is. Now, I'm not here to teach you exactly how to use Unity. There's dozens of tutorials out there who can explain it much more clear than I can, and I do recommend that you check those out. While we are going to cover some basics today, since ChatGPT itself will give us some step-by-step instructions for how to do some basic things in Unity, the real purpose of this video is to teach you how to utilize ChatGPT so you can start building stuff on your own. To start, you're simply going to need a ChatGPT account. It's totally free to sign up. You just go to the website, put in your email, sign up. I will go ahead and put the link in the description below. We can actually start right from square one and ask ChatGPT what we need to get started. As I said, I'm not going to go through every single step, but you're going to want to download what is recommended here. Again, I will leave the links in the description for these, so go ahead and install those. Once you've installed Unity and Visual Studio Community, we can get started for real. So first, let's think about what we want to actually make here. I'm thinking we'll have a player that you can move using your keyboard, an enemy that moves around on its own, and some obstacles that the player can jump over. We're going to use some simple shapes to make all of this. We're not going to get into the art stuff today. All right, first things first. Let's go over to ChatGPT and ask it how to place a simple cube to represent our player in the scene. You can see here that I just asked it a simple question in normal English, how to place a cube in a scene. So back in Unity, let's go ahead and follow its directions. Great, so we've got a cube in the scene. It's just a simple white color, so let's ask ChatGPT how we can change the color. Again, we're going to follow the instructions to right-click, create material, then as mentioned, we can set the color to whatever we want. This is our player, so let's go ahead and make it blue. Now you can either drag and drop the material to your player cube, or you can click it in the hierarchy and change the material like so. Now we have a beautiful blue cube. Using the knowledge we've already gained from ChatGPT, we know that we can create objects in the scene by simply right-clicking and selecting from a range of shapes. Let's go ahead and add a plane for the ground. We can move objects by clicking them in the scene and dragging on the arrows like so. Alright, I went ahead and made red and green colors here by simply duplicating the blue material, changing the color, then renaming the materials. You can choose any colors you like. I'll also duplicate our cube to make the cube that's going to represent our enemy. Just like before, we can drag on these arrows to move the game object around. Let's go ahead and make this one red. Now let's make the ground green. You can scale objects by pressing the E hotkey, or select the scale mode from the panel here, then drag the arrows on the axis you'd like to scale. And you can also drag the middle to scale on all axes at the same time. And you know what? This green's a little bright, so let's make it just a smidge darker, shall we? The last thing for now is we'll change the names of our three objects so it's easier to tell them apart in the hierarchy. Now that we've got all our objects created, let's go back to ChatGPT and ask it how we can actually move our player around using the WASD keys. You can see here that I've just asked it again in simple language. Back in Unity, we can go ahead and follow the instructions. We're going to right click in our asset window and create a C# script. We will name it player movement. Then double click on it to open it in Visual Studio. Now we can copy the code directly from the ChatGPT response. One thing is Unity always makes new scripts with the start and update functions. However, our code from ChatGPT is already using the update function. So we can either delete the update function and replace it with the one from ChatGPT. But to make things simple, we're just going to also delete the start function here. In this case, and in most cases, we can simply delete everything between the very top curly brace and the final one, and then bring all the scripts over from ChatGPT. Now we're going to click Save, or you can use the Control-S hotkey to save the script. Back in Unity, as instructed, we will click our player game object, click Add Component, and select our new player movement script that we just created. I'm also going to set it so our game window maximizes when we press play, but this is not necessary. Now once we hit play, we can move our player around. Cool. You'll notice that the player is just kind of floating. So let's ask ChatGPT how to enable gravity. All right, so as instructed, we're going to click on our player, click on Add Component again, and search for rigid body to add it. ChatGPT also said to make sure Use Gravity is enabled, and it looks like it is by default, so that's good. Now if we press play, our player falls to the ground, and it'll even collide with the enemy. Pretty cool. Let's go ahead and add a rigid body to our enemy object as well. Now when we press play, both the player and the enemy are affected by gravity, and collisions provide a bit more of a realistic response. Now that we've got movement for our player, let's add the ability for our enemy to move randomly on its own. Back over in ChatGPT, we're going to ask it how to make the enemy move randomly every few seconds. All right, so we're going to make a new script on our enemy. We could do it just like before, but I'll show you another way to create a script and add it to the game object at the same time. You just click on our enemy game object, go to Add Component, type in enemy movement, which is a new script, which is what ChatGPT asked us to name it. Then go ahead and press enter or click on the new script there, and it will automatically create a new C# script and attach it to the game object. Right click on the new component and click Edit Script to open it in Visual Studio. We can paste the ChatGPT code directly into here just like before. Again, we're not going to be using the start or update functions, so let's simply paste over top of that. Save the script and go back to Unity. can see here that in the component, we can change the speed of the enemy as well as the interval. Since we asked ChatGPT to move the enemy every few seconds, it made sure to include the option to change how many seconds it'll actually wait before moving again. So I'm just going to move the player a little bit further away first, and then we'll press play to test it out. Weird. Okay, so the enemy's moving very, very small movements. Yeah, it's moving only in tiny increments. And herein lies one of the caveats to using ChatGPT. Since we're using natural language to write code, you sometimes need to be very specific about what you want it to make. It's technically doing exactly what you asked. The enemy is indeed moving every few seconds, but it's only moving like a few pixels. Okay, so let's go back to ChatGPT. Now, one of the amazing things about this AI is that it remembers everything that was said in the current conversation. So we can ask it to revise the code for us to get the desired result. What we actually wanted was the enemy to be able to move a certain distance every few seconds. And you know what, I actually got a cool idea. Why don't we make it move a random distance between two numbers? So let's go ahead and ask ChatGPT to make those changes for us. Okay, cool. So it's revised the code for us. Let's go ahead and just replace everything in the current script. Great, now let's test out our new behavior. Once again, the AI has done precisely what you asked. The enemy does move to a random position every few seconds by a random amount, but it's still not exactly what we want. So let's do one more revision to the code. Let's ask it to move the enemy over time instead of instantly. All right, back in Visual Studio one more time. We're going to go ahead and copy over the ChatGPT code into our current script. Right over top what we got. Go ahead and save it, and we're going to test it out again. So the enemy is vibrating. That's a little weird. Now, when stuff like this happens, you can ask ChatGPT to help you debug it. I did ask for help on this one, but it gave me a solution that was entirely over-engineered. The actual issue here is that the enemy is constantly falling because of the gravity, but its vertical position is always being reset to 0. And since 0 is not on the ground, it sort of looks like it's vibrating. So we're just going to simply move the enemy down to the ground to fix this issue for now. In your own project, feel free to talk with ChatGPT to ask it for its solution, and it might come up with something else. All right, testing it again, you can see that our enemy is moving around as intended. Great. Next, our camera is totally stationary. So let's make it so the camera follows the player, shall we? I'm sure you've caught on by now, but we can speak totally naturally to ChatGPT to have it write code for us to achieve this behavior. All right, so again, we're going to follow these instructions and make a new C# script called camera follow. And open that up in Visual Studio. We'll go ahead and paste the code over from ChatGPT into this new script. Save again and head back into Unity. The instructions were to attach the script to our camera, and that's the main camera here. Go ahead and click Add Component and add our camera follow script. It also said to set the player in the inspector window. You can see here that there's a player field, and this is what the camera is going to actually follow. You can add it by either dragging and dropping the player game object, or you can click this button to select it from a list. You can also type in this field to search it by name. Now if you test it, you can see that the camera does in fact follow our player. Cool. It looks like the camera's a bit high though, so if I get at a maximized view here for a moment, you can see that our camera follow component has these offsets. Now we can change those while playing just by dragging it like so. Alright, we're almost done. The last thing we're going to add is the ability for our player to jump by pressing the space key. And while we wait for ChatGPT to make that script for us, I've gone ahead and made some cubes as obstacles here. Alright, let's see what ChatGPT's come up with, shall we? Alright, we're going to add one more script to our player game object called player jump. Open it up in Visual Studio, then paste the ChatGPT code just like before. Go ahead and save it, and we'll test it out one last time. Alright, so we can jump with spacebar, clear those obstacles with ease now. Look at that. And just like that, you are done. We now have a player that can move and jump around the scene, and some basic behavior for our enemy to move around on its own. From here, it really shouldn't be that difficult to start adding your own functionality by asking ChatGPT how to implement certain behaviors. Some examples could be, shooting a projectile when the player clicks the left mouse button, or knocking the player back when it hits the enemy, adding some player-enemy health. Really, the world is your oyster, and ChatGPT is your shepherd into this brave new world of game development. I hope this video was informative for you, and I hope you got some value out of this. If you'd like to see some more tips on how to utilize ChatGPT or some advanced things you can do with it, please let me know. I'd really love to hear from you. I'd also love to hear what you've been able to make, so please comment down below with your creations. I can't wait to see what you come up with. All right, and that's going to do it for me today, so until next time, I've been Frankly Fraz. Mata ne.